Erev Tov Charim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and earlier today, guys, we interviewed an amazing guest, Dean Henderson. Author Dean Henderson, written several books there. In just a moment, I'll introduce you to him from the interview we had today, but I wanted to take a few minutes to speak to you before the broadcast actually begins. And really, in a way, I shouldn't have to even discuss this issue here, but I felt like it's kind of needful because probably a little better than 50% of our audience are Christians. And I have watched over and over and over how Christians are really going at each other over all different types of issues, doctrinal issues. The division is unbelievable amongst Christians. And at a time where we shouldn't be fighting with one another over doctrinal issues and we should be trying to stand together, it still seems that Satan is winning. He's conquering and dividing the body of Christ. There are things, though, that are serious. There are issues that are very pertinent for the body of Christ, as well as for many of the other people that are listening to my voice today, because we have all types of individuals that watch this channel, including Jews, including Arabs, that listen to this broadcast, and of other religions. And there's a very serious New World Order coming our way. And we're going to find out, many of us that are actually bickering between each other over doctrinal issues, you're going to find out you're going to need to be standing together a little stronger in the not so distant future. We invited Dean on because Dean has some very powerful knowledge over 5G technology. He had some amazing insights on the historic side of the Nephilim, how they came into existence, some things that kind of complements the work that I've done as well. And I wanted to share those insights with you. Now, I may not agree with everything that Dean says. And I know as far as when it comes to Jesus Christ, me believing Jesus to be my Savior, we have maybe a slight difference in views on that. But then again, there's a lot of people out there that listen to this broadcast that are not believers whatsoever. But our desire is to bring you information that we feel is critical to you. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Dean Henderson. Shalom Chavrim, I'm Steve Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and we have got a very special guest in the audience with us today, or via the internet here, Skype here, Dean Henderson. And Dean Henderson, he's written many books. He's a journalist, from what I can see as well. He's been on RT, a lot of other programs there. His website, hendersonlefthook.wordpress.com. That's his main website. And Dean has written extensively. I have spent the last several days going through his book, Nephilim Crown of 5G Apocalypse. It'll be on your screen for you as well. And also everything down in the description, how to be able to contact Dean, order his books, etc. Dean, welcome to the program here. We are really delighted to have you on with us.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Dean, your book, Nephilim Crown 5G Apocalypse, I don't think there could have been a title that could have said it better than what you said here. It really covers everything, and as I have read through this entire book, the first thing that jumps out at me, because we've talked a lot about this with our own audience as far as the Nephilim, is how they actually got here. I know we're going to kind of go over the entire scope of this. We're going to be looking at the Nephilim, how they got here, what the agenda is, as you put it here, the 5G apocalypse, the mind control, as I stated to many times to a lot of people in the past, I said that if they look at it from a biblical perspective, they always talk about the third temple. And I said, well, in reality, whether they build the third temple, which I'm sure they will for the Antichrist, and I know you share that same view as well, but I said, and the ultimate goal is like Satan said, that's recorded, he wanted to be like the Most High, and sit in the temple of God as if he were God. Well, the Most High dwells in a human body, not inside of a physical building. And so in my perspective, it's always been the human body is where he would want to be at. So looking at this 5G and knowing what you have already written on this as well, and as a 5G apocalypse, the whole thing here is amazing. So I don't know where to begin, but maybe we should start off with just if you can give people the background about the Nephilim, how they came into being, because you bring in some things that I've never noticed before myself. I see it through the Jewish bloodline, or the Israelites, not just Jews, but the Israelites themselves. I saw it. In fact, I just did a video yesterday. I finally connected it in the book of Psalms and also in Isaiah chapter 57. Both those places there, David and Psalm 106, clearly show that intermingling. They just didn't translate it in English that way, of the seed lines there. And then, of course, in Babylon, where the priests themselves got involved. But you have a little bit more information on that I would really like to glean from, if you can share that with us.
Yeah, sure. Well, my take on it is based on, coming to this from different scholars, different information. The Bible, of course, being very important. Also the work of Sitchin and people like that. The Nag Hammadi scrolls. So, my understanding of it is, these characters were around before the flood, and probably why the flood occurred was to get rid of them, and some remnants survived. And it's interesting because as far as the New Testament Bible, there seems to be two different creation stories. One is involves like all men and women coming into the world, but not until the plants were created or the animals, and everything was ready for mankind. And then mankind comes into the world, and it comes in multiple men, multiple women. It's not Adam and Eve per se. It's just humanity coming into the world. The other creation stories involves, of course, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, the Adamus, as clay tablets in Samaria call them. This, I think, is the genetic manipulation of humanity which occurred. It's hard to say how many of us were affected by that or are a result of that, and how many aren't. But I have my own kind of take on that. I think that I'll share with you in a bit. But at any rate, it was the temptation in the Garden of Eden, naturally occurring. The first version, when man comes into the world after the plants and animals, it depicts us as more of a hunting and gathering society right off the bat in this paradise. The Adam and Eve story involves getting kicked out of the paradise, Garden of Eden, and basically becoming an agrarian. It also involves temptation, taking a bite out of the apple from the tree of knowledge, which to me indicates the point where humankind began to worship the intellect instead of operating from the heart chakra, from instinct, from which is God, which is how God comes through each of us and communicates with us. We got trapped in our heads, and you take that to the logical extension of where we're at today with AI and technology. And increasingly, it seems like people are being trapped in their brains, in their heads, in their intellects, which is a fall. There's some knowledge there, but it's a very shallow and a very small part of knowledge. Sort of taking the Royal Society version of what you've been taught about these lies, like the Big Bang, like evolution, like particle physics, that they pound into people's heads. And you have these preconceived notions, and you take those around, and they're the lens that you see the world through, rather than having the ability to take and just look at things without any preconceptions. And that's what the Native Americans and the Aborigines did. And that's called empirical knowledge. That's actual science. So in other words, the indigenous people are the real scientists, and the further Western civilization has gone down the road of agriculture, industrialism, capitalism, the less pure the science has become. And the Luciferian Freemasons that basically underpin the crown, the Nephilim crown, and created the Royal Society as a propaganda arm. They know that. They know they're taking us into our heads, and that's where I believe Lucifer can, like you say, inhabit our temples, each of our temples, which is our bodies, and take us over with this sort of arrogant presumption that we know everything. It's just become with the internet now. Everybody knows everything. They just think they know everything. Google is God, right? So you just Google it, and then you go tell your friends how smart you are, not knowing, of course, that Google has these, qubit-based computers now that, we don't know where that knowledge is coming from. It's very possible that knowledge is coming through some portal from Saturn, from some entities, from something not human. I actually see the AI as synonymous with the Nephilim or the Anunnaki or the fallen angels or the Witikos, which is what the Cree called these things, or the Wendigos, which is other tribes call them. There's been a knowledge of these entities throughout history. The jinn, of course, the Muslims refer to them as jinn. But the way I look at it, from the Garden of Eden forward, that was the intervention, that was the manipulation of mankind. Also, that was the enslavement of mankind into agriculture to feed Babylon, Ur, and the cities which the Nephilim became the heads of. This resulted in this massive enslavement of humanity into agriculture to feed the cities, but also it resulted in the emergence of capitalism and a class structure, which you have the banker class that run the cities and didn't work, and then you have the agricultural workers who supplied the cities. And also with agriculture, you have a situation where one side of the valley has a drought, the other side has good rain, and immediately this farmer is borrowing grain from this other farmer, and that just creates this class system, which was never really possible in a hunting and gathering communal society. So this is where I believe the corruption of man started. It was the way of life that we were living was so pure for millions of years, I believe. It's understated by anthropologists working for the Royal Society, the Geographic Society, but we were living purely, with God in the right way we were supposed to live, and then this intervention happened. So I trace it from Samaria. Well, basically it started in the enslavement of agriculture in Samaria. There was a branch that and these people, are the tribe of Dan or the Canaanites. Part of them went north into the Caucasus from Babylon, and this is where you get, I think, the Khazarians and the Rothschilds become involved. This is where all religion and spirituality was developed. In my mind, those things are all corrupting influences. The actual way to look at reality, the nature of reality, is just right action. Just do the right thing. Don't have these things about religion or even spirituality, because that's when that all came about in Babylon, the development of these things, really. The other branch went to Egypt, I believe, and topped off the pyramids, which were probably built by the Moors. They're also, the Moors are just severely discredited throughout history because they were black. They were a maritime culture. They were rivaling the maritime abilities of the Phoenician bankers and the Knights Templars. And so they're discredited. So they probably built those things, and then they were topped off, I think, by the Anunnaki invaders, Isis and Osiris being basically Anki and Enlil, as we know them in the Sitchin research in Samaria. So from Egypt, I believe they burned the Alexandria Library on the way out to hide the names, to hide the genealogies, to hide the fact that they were hybrids, human Nephilim hybrids, these rulers, which explains why they had these certain abilities that humans didn't have. And by the way, humans used to have those abilities too, but they were hidden in the Grand Lodge of Cairo. This is where Freemasonry, Kabbalah, and Muslim Brotherhood all came out of, was to conceal the knowledge of who we are and our abilities to heal ourselves, our abilities to do things like teleport and just all kinds of things that actually we can do if we knew we could do it. And part of that's been the shutting down of our pineal gland on the way. But I think they burned the Alexandria Library. Then they went across and they established the Roman Empire. And to do that required the ships, the maritime, the Knights Templar, the Crusades. But they not only pilfered riches of the Middle East, they went around the world and took all the artifacts and all the gold and everything from all the native tribes everywhere and hoarded it and took it to Rome and started the Holy Roman Empire. And again, these are bloodline families. They change their name about every 300 years. And they started the Holy Roman Empire. Well, then I do think Jesus was pretty much a rebel against the Nephilim crown, but also against, of course, the Sanhedrin, Jews who were working with the court Jews. I would call them court Jews, because this has been the pattern throughout history. There's been these Hofjuden, or these court Jews, who have done the bidding of the crown, and that's why. And they sort of shield the crown, because some people get stuck on, anti-Semitism, and they say, oh, the Jews are behind everything. But really, the crown is using them, and it's not all Jews, of course, but it's just these few families like the Rothschilds that they put in front of the crown to protect the crown. Now, so if you get past the anti-Semitism, and if which should be pretty easy, but then if you get to you get to the Rothschilds, and then if you get to the Rothschilds and you stop, you have to realize that's the Red Shield, and they changed their name from Bauer to Rothschild, and I would argue they're not Jewish at all. They're Satanists, and then they shield the crown, the Rothschilds. So some people get past the Zionism, and Zionism, by the way, means grafting. It means SCION is CION, and it means the grafting. So it's nothing to do with Jewish people. It has to do with the grafting of the Nephilim bloodline onto the human bloodline. And that's why I'm so obsessed with genealogy and DNA and who's got what kind of blood. And they tend to be Rh negative, these crown entities, whether it's the Windsors or the Bourbons or the Merovingians or the Habsburgs or the Algobrandinis or the Botticellis. They tend to be Rh negative bloodlines, which is interesting. So it's a different kind of blood. It's a royal blood. It's purple. It probably is a little bit more purple, and that's why purple is the royal color, and that's why the sangreal. I think that's what that word means: royal blood, holy blood, sangreal. So, and then they think that gives them the right to lord over us. So they took us from agriculture to enslavement, and that in Egypt and in Samaria and the Mesopotamian region where agriculture, everybody knows, started. They started the Holy Roman Empire, and they spread out throughout Europe. They divided up into little family kingdoms. About the 12th century, they start the notion of fascism, which is the bundling of families. The fascist symbol is a bundling of rods together with an axe on top, but it symbolizes the getting together of the powerful families and protecting each other's interests against the peasantry or the serfs. So there was a battle between the Roman Catholic Church and some of these bankers, because even the Roman Catholic Church, for all their corruption and for the fact that they worked with these people a lot throughout history, at some point got clued in, and they hung Jacques de Molay on Friday the 13th. That's where that comes from. Pope Clement and the King of France said, we've had enough of these Templars. We gotta, they're black magicians, they're sorcerers, they're Satanists, and they're bad, and they've hoarded all this wealth, and we've got to crack down on them. So they hung Jacques de Molay. To this day in America, there's a de Molay Society for the kids of Freemasons that they initiate them through. The Templars they fled to Scotland at that point. That was, I believe, 1192. So they took their wealth to Scotland, what they had of it, and they waited out in Scotland. And then William the Conqueror invited him down into the city of London eventually. They got help from the Bruce family, from the Sinclair family, and folks, some of the bloodline families who had already gone to the British Isles and were there and ran that encampment, the Tudors. And they started the modern version then of Freemasonry, or entrenched it anyway. Came down into the city of London, developed the city of London. After a stop in Venice, I missed the part about there was a war. The bankers went to Venice from Rome. Then they moved their way up into the city of London. Started the Dutch East India Company, the Bank of Amsterdam, which was the first private central bank in the world. Then started the Bank of England and moved across the channel. And why? Because it was an island. Back then, maritime defense was very important. So it was a very strategic place, the British Isles, to start what we now know as the United Kingdom. And that's exactly what the United Kingdom is. It's a united kingdom. So there's families all over Europe and all over Asia, in fact. The Li family in China, the Yamamoto family in Japan, the Khan family in India, Pakistan region, as in Genghis Khan bloodline, as in the Aga Khan Foundation, which supports all the MI6 Islamic terrorists trained by the Mossad. But United Kingdom is where they have their wealth. That's their geopolitical center, along with the Bank of International Settlements up in the mountains. Again, a very safe haven in Switzerland. And that's why Switzerland is not part of the EU, because that's their big repository for money. But geopolitically speaking, it's all about the City of London. There you have the Bank of England, which runs the offshore banking network all around the world, whether it's Bahamas, Cayman Islands, Bermuda, the Isle of Jersey, Isle of Man. All this is hidden. It's trillions and probably hundreds of trillions of dollars in wealth. This is where the Royal Nephilim Crown hides its wealth, using people like George Soros as their money managers, and the Rothschilds as their money managers. And they have the things like Quantum Envy and Curacao is one of their big funds where there's all these royal money is tossed. And that's why people have this misconception that somehow like Bill Gates is the wealthiest person, in America or in the world. Well, he's not. It's not even close. I mean, these royals have so much wealth, and so much real estate, so much just everything but it's all concealed through these trusts and through this Bank of England offshore network, which is all a creation of the crown.
All right.
So then you also have the Anglican Church, which is the people go after the Catholic Church all the time, and yeah, there's a lot of problems there. But really, the Anglican Church is the Freemason Church. They're the more evil of the churches. I should add that the Protestant Reformation was funded by the Venetian bankers to try to go after the Catholics. Really, because it's the doctrine. It's the fact that Catholics believe you actually have to do good actions to get to heaven, whereas the Protestants, they don't really believe that. They just think, and increasingly now with these evangelicals, they just think, oh, I accept Jesus as my Savior, I automatically go to heaven. I can murder, I can rape, I can kill, I can, and it's crazy. But and the Catholic doctrine isn't perfect either. Like I say, all religions to me are just they get between you and God is what they really do. They get between you and Jesus, you and the Creator is what mostly they do. But at least that doctrine. So that's why they always go after the Catholic. And also the Catholic Church is probably the only thing powerful enough now that the Russian the wall has fallen, although they're coming back. But they're the only entity maybe powerful enough to actually crush the Illuminati bankers and Nephilim Crown. And that's why they're constantly having to discredit the Catholic Church as much as they can. But anyway, they set up the City of London. You also have the Royal Society there. You have Chatham House. You have the Royal Institute Affairs, which spawned the Council on Foreign Relations, the Canadian Council on Foreign Relations, the Australian Council on Foreign Relations, all these entities. And this all came about during the Round Table, where Alfred Milner and Lord Rothschild, Walter Rothschild, they developed this Round Table. They sent Cecil Rhodes to South Africa. They sent the Warburgs to Eastern Europe. They sent the Kuhn Loebs and the Rockefellers and the Morgans to America. Certain people got different little areas of the world to sort of lord over as bankers and resource managers for the Crown. And out of the Business Roundtable came the Royal Institute of International Affairs and the Council on Foreign Relations and all that, which still runs U.S. foreign policy to this day. The CFR does. Then you have the Royal Society, which administers the 7 sacred sciences. And it's all lies, and this is something that's been handed down from the fallen angels, from the Nephilim. So it's like music, astronomy, arithmetic, geometry, rhetoric, logic, and I'm missing one. Anyway,
we're gonna come back to that. Let me ask you a couple of questions real quick while we're going through this. I wrote a few little notes here. One, just a comment on this, because I thought it's kind of interesting. You mentioned that the word Zionist really is grafting. It's a grafting with the Nephilim. And I'll never forget, I was invited to a Trump rally here in Florida that Roger Stone was the keynote speaker at. I was the only journalist that was invited to come there. Of course, he had no idea, and none of them that invited me really knew what my beliefs were. So afterwards, Roger Stone, he comes up, he wanted to meet me, and he said, he takes me by the hand and he says, I'm a hardcore Zionist, and so is President Trump. So when you made that statement, grafting with the Nephilim, that really caught my attention there. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I hate to say it, in my opinion, Trump has almost become a cult. It's like a sensation. When he first came in, I was already leery of him. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I'll give him benefit of the doubt. Maybe they can try to work out some peace with Russia. We get rid of these sanctions and we can bring some normalcy in this world. But I knew I was over optimistic on that. But unfortunately, the people have been through Google Analytics and Facebook and all the things that they dig, the algorithms to be able to get. They found out what the people wanted. They wanted Hillary arrested. They want a wall on the border, and they wanted to make America great again. None of these, he even admits, none of these are his own things. But he spewed it out of his mouth, and he became God to the evangelical movement. More so, I think it's, what is it, the New Reformation, New Apostolic Reformation, or something like that. These are the main ones that are behind him, which I also found a lot of ties to the money laundering with some of these groups as well. Just elaborate on that if you would.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It is like a cult, and I think, Trump is a caricature of all of our misplaced fears, and with the AI, revolution, the fourth industrial revolution that's going on, they can literally create a caricature of all of our fears, and that they will put that into a persona, and there he is, and that's Trump. So that's why, maybe Trump's not a racist, but a lot of his followers are. Most of them.
Yeah.
Maybe Trump's not this, but his followers are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think that the end game to this is he's a billionaire. He's basically owned by the Rothschild. Wilbur Ross was the bond trader at Rothschild Inc. who bailed him out of his Taj Mahal mess. And in return, I think he became president. And Wilbur Ross is a very interesting character. He's the Commerce Secretary, right? So as Commerce Secretary, he oversees the Patent Office. So who administers the Patent Office? Well, Serco administers the Patent Office. And who funded Facebook? Well, NBNK funded Facebook along with the CIA. And NBNK was a British investment fund that Wilbur Ross started after his Invesco days, because he also founded Invesco. Then he went over there across the pond and he started this, and is on the board of directors of NBNK, were like the chairman of Lloyd's Bank, the chairman of HSBC. I mean, it was big time, big wheel British aristocracy, right? So the very day NBNK folded, Facebook started up. And also the very day Facebook started up, the DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Administration, shut down LifeLog, which is Facebook. So in other words, Facebook is a military operation started by the Crown, using the Pentagon, DARPA, funded by the Crown, though funded by MBNK, that's the Crown. And this Facebook is basically a way to totally mind control people. So once they had that there, Cambridge Analytica comes in, Cambridge to Oxford. Cambridge and Oxford are that's where the Crown trains its academics. That's why Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, and so on. There's been many. But then they come in, and this Cambridge Analytica is a subsidiary of a British defense company, which has been rigging elections in over 200 countries. They wanted Trump. Not Clinton, because they knew that that's what the people wanted, but they also want to push the whole debate to the right, towards fascism, towards billionaire families running things like medieval times. It's more akin to their bloodline history, the Nephilim's history, where, it used to be they just took half your crop and, maybe the church got a quarter of it, and then you got, nothing. And this is kind of where the economy's going. It's like an electronic feudalism, electronic medieval setup. So I think the idea is to put Trump in there. Then you turn the Democrats, you just make them crazy. And that's worked. I mean, just look around you. They're crazy. They're nuts. But they're nuts. Like, Trump triggers them. So some people respond to the fears that Trump represents, and they like him. Other people respond to the fears Trump represents, and it drives them nuts to see that caricature of an idea running the country. So they go off the rails and start, they just react to Trump. They're not proactive anymore. They just react. And so by doing that, you further discredit any semblance of what was left of the left, which wasn't much anyway, honestly, and hasn't been for 50, 60 years in this country, really since the Wobblies and Eugene Debs. There has been no left in this country, okay? But you further discredit, you pull the whole debate to the right. You know, Clinton's center right anyway. I mean, Trump's right, Clinton's center right already. But you're pushing the whole thing right the whole time. And if you look at around the world, what's really going on, you look at the government in Hungary now, extreme right-wing government. You look at the governments being overthrown, whether it's Syria, whether it's in Assad, whether it's, you know, the attempted overthrow anyway, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Iran, whether it's Venezuela, they're going after Maduro. They just took care of Evo Morales. They got rid of Rafael Correa and put in this Lenin Moreno, this stooge. So they're continually attacking the real left, the real revolutionary left that can actually take on this Nephilim crown, because that's the only thing that's ever going to work, is when you start talking about expropriating wealth from trillionaires, and you quit talking about, you know, transgender issues, gun control, abortion, all these things that just divide people and, you know, really aren't the solutions at all, obviously. So this is what they've done, and it's all orchestrated. It's all algorithms. It's all scientific, you know, and it's all being orchestrated. It's total mind control. So I think Trump is a cult leader pretty much, and those people that follow him, it's crazy. And to think he's some kind of savior, I mean, to think some billionaire, you know, who's made his living just exploiting people, exploiting women, exploiting everything in his path, is somehow going to now be a man of the people and come here and, yeah, he's going to do an investigation on 911 and he's going to nationalize the Fed. And, oh, yeah, come on, man, really? So this QAnon is a total NSA, again, a program. It's an algorithmically produced program. And this is why Trump went around, see, initially to Alex Jones and stuff, because they knew that the margin of victory they needed to win over Clinton was the alt-right, what they call the alt-right, which in a lot of ways isn't alt at all. You know, it's the same old stuff. It's Milton Friedman, Chicago School, Austrian School of Economics. This garbage, the Austrian School comes straight out of the Crown. They fund the whole thing. The Chicago School and Friedman and all that stuff, that's Rockefeller family that funds the University of Chicago almost in its entirety. So all of these right-wing economic treatises, which I guess want to, further privatize things, further, you know, make the disparity of wealth worse. I mean, and then they act like they're under attack, like, oh, capitalism's under attack, here comes the evil socialists. It's like, where are they? Where are the evil socialists? I don't see them, you know, and it's just so they've had to ratchet that up this next election cycle, because last time they didn't do it, and oh my God, we got Bernie Sanders and he almost won. Oh, they had to cheat on him, you know, so they cheated on him. And so this time they're talking more communist, socialist, you know, boogeyman. And we got Elizabeth Warren in there just in case. So she'll divide the votes. This neoliberal capitalist Elizabeth Warren, this kind of dingbat, she'll divide the vote from Bernie if there's any doubt. And plus, Bernie's kind of jumped on the Democrat bandwagon a little nowadays. And, you know, I support him to 16, but I don't know now. He's talking the same kind of crazy stuff. I don't know. But I think the political situation is almost beyond repair. And I think right now, we're at the end times where it's just a spiritual solution. And the spiritual solution is really to separate now from this evil system, whether it's the political system, the economic system, just the technology especially. And people need to disengage from it all and just back away and just remain calm. And don't take a side, don't join a camp, because that's what they're doing. They're herding the sheeple into pens. Here's your pen, here's your pen, those are your choices. There's going to be just a few of us that refuse the pens, and then they'll harass us and run us down and try to, you know, make our lives hard with social credit. But that's my fate. I accept that. That's the fate of anybody in this context of evil that's coming into this world. Because you're right, in the beginning you were saying they're coming into our bodies or the temple. That's exactly right. They're trying to assimilate us and initiate us into this Luciferian cult, you see, with all this brainwashing, all this mind control, all these false political choices. They're trying to assimilate us, and rather than take us over and subdue us with guns and military and invasion force and all this, would it be so much easier if they could just make us love evil? And that's what, unfortunately, you see around you. You see people beginning to embrace evil as normal. It's a normalization of evil is what's going on. And that's just, you know, again, the only answer to that is God and Creator, and disengaging from that and go outside and revel in the beauty of creation, of the trees, the mountains, the ocean, the animals. Just remember all God's creation. And that's perfect. And it all fits together and there's no conflict. And, you know, the Royal Society scientists, they'll tell you, oh, it's survival of the fittest and, oh, the weak deer that get left behind by the herd and all this crap. I've lived in the country my whole life and I can tell you that's all a bunch of lies. The weak in the herd are always taken care of, looked after, especially, you know, by the rest of the deer. It's all a bunch of lies. So, you know, that's just one example of the lies, that keeps people scared, keeps people in the state of fear as opposed to a state of love.
Right.
And truly, there's your choices. Okay, you can love and be godly, or you can fear, and you will be consumed by the Luciferian spirit.
I got another question for you, Dean, as well. Couple of things, and I'm gonna give both of them to you so you can elaborate on these. And so it's two different issues here. And then I'm going to be going through some of the things in your book as well. One thing that people are going to be curious about, in your opinion, and I've dealt with this myself already from the Dead Sea Scrolls, from the Hebrew writings, and I like to cross-reference what I have in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because when I look at the Masoretic text, I realize there's some manipulation there. You know, the Septuagint, I like the Septuagint better. I don't like the vowels that the Talmudists put into their Hebrew writings. So that's why I like the Dead Sea Scrolls better, because they manipulate all that. But many people are going to ask the question, how did the Nephilim get beyond the flood? Now, I can see it clearly. I see it like in the case of Babylon. I mean, it's told to us, literally it's written even in their Hebrew Bible. It's actually written there. But I would like to get your perspective on that. Second question, totally different from that one. You were mentioning Freemasons earlier, and one of the things that I had discovered recently, and I did a video on this, is because my wife, she really kind of stirred the hornet's nest with the 7 Noahide laws that are signed every year in Washington, D.C. by every president, which there is no biblical basis for it. It's a Talmudic, it's Rambam writes it. I mean, on my bookshelf behind, I have all the Talmud, I have the Aruch Shulchan, I have all the documents that these guys use, so I know what they're up to. And but the 7 Noahide laws are what they're talking about to govern the entire humanity, part of a New World Order system. And when I mentioned the Freemasons, though, it's because I found that the 21st degree Freemason, this is going back to the 1700s when Freemasonry was being, I call it infiltrated. Maybe it's not. You're an amazing historian, so I think you can really elaborate on that. But it seemed like that the Talmudists were infiltrating in England in the 1700s, the Freemason lodges there, and that's where they brought in the Noahide laws back then. I think they pronounce it Noahide laws in their writings there. But and the 21st degree Mason, when you read what is written about him, he is basically the executioner for the Noahide laws, which all those, if they're broken, you know, they are capital punishment. And of course, they seem to mirror the 10 Commandments. So some people think, wow, you know, what's the big deal with them? But in reality, for the Christian people is where I take it up the issue with, because if you believe that Jesus is divine, off with your head is the way that the Talmudic laws are. So if we can deal with that, how did the Nephilim get here? And then, of course, what is your thought, Freemasonry and their connection? Maybe in this case here would be the connection to the Talmudist, because I know I've read a lot of what you wrote in there about that. As you mentioned earlier, the Rothschilds, you know, from the Bauer family, they are the red shield. They're there to protect the crown. So there's a lot of intricate things there that I'm not aware of that you seem to have a deeper knowledge on that I'd really like to share with our viewers.
Sure. Well, as to how they got here, yeah, it's definitely a big question. I just tend to think that, you know, we're dealing more with, you know, spiritual realm here. I mean, we're all incarnated into physical bodies and stuff, but really,
well,
it's
okay.
a shell.
Maybe this will kind of help, because I'll kind of share with you my thoughts here, because I know some of the things that you've written here. You look at the sciences that they had back even during the time of the pyramids, for example, 3,000 years ago, there's a lot of the sciences that they had there that we don't, are just now getting into today. I'll say it like that. When I looked at this, one of the key things that I noticed that was being commanded through Moses was that we were not to get involved when they came into the land with the Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, Amorites, etc. Don't get involved into the necromancing, the soothsaying. There was some type, we would call it today maybe witchcraft, but there was something that they were able to do. And I found this in the Dead Sea Scrolls, ironically, that this, and the Dead Sea Scrolls clearly shows that this is what happened into Babylon as well. There was some type of thing that they were able to cross over. And of course, in Babylon, they were intermarrying with people that were already of Nephilim blood race to begin with. But they were also learning this technology that it seems like maybe they're able to pass through a dimension. And when I did the film on the fallen angels are imprisoned in Antarctica, and I could see in there it talks about in Enoch there is a veil of fire, but it's like they had figured out how to get beyond that, because clearly the fallen angels are going to be here on the earth all the way to the consummation of the end of time, if you look at that from the book of Enoch's writings, and that they would actually be involved in the affairs of man on the earth. So even though they're supposedly imprisoned, it looks like as the coined term, I guess, with Alex Jones, prison planet. In other words, the prison is here. Maybe we're imprisoned in these human bodies, who knows? But that's where I'm looking at. Is there a connection through the sciences that they had, that they figured out how to get back into this side? Because most people, Bible-believing people, would think that when the flood came, they were all wiped off. But yet in the Hebrew scriptures, the word Nephilim is used. Not giants like you have in English, but Nephilim is actually used in the book of Numbers 13:33. So that's the question. What's your thoughts on that as far as technology? Is that a way that they did it?
Yeah. They did it with technology. I think they did it with corruption of humanity, with technology, with these promises of this glorious technology. And if you look at where we're at today, it's the same situation. People are being tempted by the technology. Oh, you got to have a Facebook portal. You got to have an Alexa. You got to have this. You got to have that. And these are all enslavement tools for the human soul that put you back in your mind. So back then it was the same thing. It's like, well, yeah, we could have got rid of them. We could have just been poof, all gone. But no, the humans were tempted. The humans were corrupted. This is why the temptation, again, the symbolism with the biting of the apple. Look at Apple Computer. Look at the logo. It's an apple with a bite out of it. Because it's the technologies. This is the technology that the Nephilim used to tempt mankind. Whether it's the building of the pyramids and all these moving of these big old stones and all this, and even on the History Channel nowadays, you watch all these programs and these gods, they were amazing. They had this amazing technology, and it's all like pro-gods. Well, the gods are the Nephilim. The gods are the fallen angels. This is not a good thing. Technology has destroyed this planet. Technology has always been the destroyer of planet Earth. Ask the Native Americans. I mean, it makes life easier in the short term, but in the long term, it makes our lives hell, and it creates a hell on earth because it disconnects us from God's natural world. God built the natural world. Where this technology comes from, this artificial intelligence, it's not from here. So I look at aliens, AI, the Nephilim, it's all the same thing. If it's not from here, it's not what God planned to be here. And yet, yes, they brought it into this world a long time ago. In the book of Enoch, we know all this stuff, this DNA manipulation they did, this science, this technology that they had, and it was wiped out. And that's probably why we didn't know about that they had this for so many thousands of years, because we weren't really supposed to know how to manipulate DNA. We weren't really supposed to know how to manipulate genetics. We weren't really supposed to know. We weren't supposed to go there. Yeah, we weren't supposed to go there. And again, we're going there. And so, yeah, it's probably possible with all the algorithms of the AI, that the aliens doing the thinking for us now, that, yeah, we can open portals, and that's that veil of fire maybe. That's, now we're just able to open that, and, yeah, let the Saturn death cult people run this world with their information, but we're not supposed to go there. So I just look at the reason that they came back is because we got corrupt. We let them back with our corruption, with our own corruption. If you look around you now, this world is so corrupt. I mean, not just government, not just big business. You know, I look around me and I see it just corruption everywhere.
Yes.
Everyone just trying to sort of, I don't know, pulling over on their neighbor, or just, I mean, just with human interaction. I mean, there's good people out there, but there's a lot of people becoming corrupt. So I think it's just that simple. It's just the reason they came back is because of humanity let them come back. So it's a spiritual thing. It's not a physical thing. And even if they weren't here physically, it doesn't even matter because it's the spiritual aspect. It's like if we could just cleanse ourselves of that desire and that need for wanting more, wanting technology, wanting these things that aren't natural, and just accepting and being grateful for the creation, what we have, understanding that we're connected to everything. We're relatives of the humans, yes, but we're also relatives of the four-legged creatures. We're relatives of the rocks and the trees, and all these things are our family. This is the Garden of Eden that God intended us to live in. But no, it's not enough. So we want a portal, or we want an Alexa, or we want another laptop, or we want a smart car, or we want a smart refrigerator. Well, that's why we're going to get 5G enslavement. I mean, it's just that simple. It's our own, we were tempted. Again, we're being tempted again by the serpent, okay? And we're being, and a lot of people are accepting and are biting out of the apple and are getting in their heads, losing their hearts, losing their appreciation of what we have, and wanting more and more and more. And all the great religious traditions will tell you that's bad, you know, well, that you should just be grateful.
Let's do this. We'll save the Freemason part towards the end. Let me go into this next question because it's really where you're leaving off at anyway. And this is going to take us down the 5G rabbit hole as well. But one of the things that I kind of started looking at more from a spiritual side of this, but at the same time, what their plan is. When I go back to the Garden of Eden and I see the temptation that Adam and Eve are placed under by the serpent, one of the things that I noticed is that, of course, naturally, God says the day you eat thereof, that day you will die. All right, so we say 1,000 years on earth is a day with God, and we know that, of course, they never lived beyond 1,000 years. There is a major pump up of a millennial reign, and you know, on earth, and I'm not, especially with our viewers, because I know there's a lot of people that believe in a millennial reign. And I'm not saying that I don't believe in a millennial reign, but I also believe that there is in this, how would you put it here, with a fake millennial agenda by an Antichrist system that it's, again, taking the bite out of technology in order to promise this longevity, which is never, because God didn't mean for us to live only for a millennium. He meant for us to live eternally, and He gave us everything that we would have need of. So really and truly, Adam and Eve cut their life short. They had eternal life. I mean, when they took from the tree of life, the tree of life is exactly that. God breathed into his nostrils Chaim. The Chaim is his own life, which is eternal. There is no end to it. But in this case here, they took instead that knowledge, and knowledge shortened their life. But as I see this New World Order coming, and I know that we share that same view, Jerusalem is going to be the headquarters. I used to think it was the Vatican. I really laid waste to the Pope of Rome over this. Now, of course, Pope Francis, he's a Jesuit. He is a Jew masquerading as a Christian that is leading the Catholic Church underneath or in cooperation with Israel. But it's to bring about the New World Order. China, as I've been told by Mossad friends that I have, is going to be the new world power. And Israel, with the technology that they have, and I've been told also by Mossad friends that I have, that they are working with entities. I was told flat out, he said, Steve, he said, in fact, the corporations are not even listed to where you can see it publicly, the companies. And he said they're trying to integrate he said, literally, he said, we're looking for people with a certain DNA strand. And he said, they're actually looking for priests. He said, I just tell you, Steve, they're looking for Kohanim. Because he said the Kohanim have a DNA that matches their entities. And he tells me they have 9,000 IQ. So we know we're talking about fallen angels. And he's made it clear that it's fallen angels. Or aliens, however people want to look at that. And he said they're wanting to take and integrate the AI technology into the human genome. And I think this is what they're going to promise to bring about their millennial reign, is that if they integrate you, cross you with this technology. And I remember Jana interviewed one time Harold Kausvilla, and Harold in Germany, he came to Prague when we were there. Our office used to be in Prague. And Harold was talking about the nanoparticles that are put out in the air. He says when you breathe in these nanoparticles from the chemtrails, he said that's the nanotechnology that Israel created in order to take 5G and connect the two together. He says you're already breathing it in. And he said unless you get that out of you, you're going to become the antenna for the 5G technology. And that's just one of the thoughts he threw. So I'm really putting a lot on you at one time here, Dean. So, but as smart as you are, I don't think it's going to be a problem. So anyway, my thought is that Israel's saying that they're going to have a cure for cancer, all this kind of stuff. They're talking about longevity. They talk about the nano gold, things like that. They took the guy from Arizona, all the stuff that he had, took him over to the eastern countries. I always told my wife, they'll never see that again because that's going to be part of their New World Order system. But they're going to shortchange the people. They're going to offer them as if it's something that the Messiah is bringing, which, by the way, I don't know, Dean, if you're familiar with this two-part series. I got all kinds of junk all over this book right here. This here, the name of the book here, this is called The Josephic Messiah, Leviathan, Metatron, and the Sacred Serpent by Joel David Bask. And Joel actually, he writes in here, because now that the Talmudists are willing to come out with the Gaon of Vilna to talk about the Sacred Serpent. And they're really trying to integrate Jesus as part of that system, bringing it about. And I'm afraid Christians are about to fall in for this. Yeah, and they're going to take the bite right out of the tree of knowledge of good and evil rather than accepting the way of life that the Eternal Father had set up for us in the very beginning. So, that's a lot. Here, I threw it in your lap. Take it away.
That's all very well stated, Stephen. I think it's all true, and this is where it's all going. It's going to be this massive deception. If you look at what's going on right now, we're in the age of deception, massive deception. Luciferian way of doing things is to invert reality. So you take the truth and you make it a lie. You take a lie and you make it a truth, and that's. Now that they're able to operate out in the open with this New World Order agenda, and that's what the New World Order agenda is to turn this God's creation into a Luciferian hell. And so, you're exactly right. There's going to be some kind of probably alien deception. This is why you're seeing all these shows about the aliens. This is why you're hearing the government now actually releasing that, the Navy saw these aliens, and there's going to be this disclosure, there's this disclosure project even, which I don't trust at all that bunch, because, who are you to disclose to me anything? I mean, who are you working for? Who's paying your bills? That you need to school me on aliens and stuff. So they're going to use that alien thing, and somehow they're going to hook that in with the second coming of Jesus, and with this longevity thing you're talking about. That's the transhuman agenda, right? I mean, look what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink, and basically going to just, drill into people's skulls and put this little chip in the brain, man. And, you can live forever. The joke's on them, because if anyone accepts that Luciferian way, they're probably never going to, they don't have salvation anymore. They don't go to the, whatever the afterlife is, there's going to be none for them. So they may live forever on this earth, but this earth's going to be turned into a hellhole, and you're not even going to want to live here. but they're going to be stuck in it. They're going to be, this is the matrix. This is the matrix, that they're going to be stuck in the matrix. They're going to be used as batteries, because this is the Freemasonic project, is to basically turn people into batteries, like negative energy batteries, to power this this initiation, this inculcation, this introduction into evil that I talked about earlier being normalized. Because to bring evil into the world, you need to generate massive amounts of negative energy. So why do you think on Facebook it's all this fighting and acrimony and, oh yeah, this, you know, gotcha, sort of gotcha, you know. I mean, it's just the whole internet. It's just this negative cesspool of people fighting each other over things that don't even matter, you know. And this all just generates negative energy, and then people go away from the computer and they feel sad, they feel angry, they feel outraged, they feel, you know, disconnected from the world. That's more negative energy. And so this is what they're going to do, and then they're going to sell it all as, because of the inversion of good is bad and bad is good. They're going to tell you that's all good. It's good for you to be addicted to technology, and it's good for you, you know, to be constantly outraged or sad or depressed, or no, it's good for you, really. And of course, there's money in it too. Of course, this is always follow the money, cui bono, and this is where the money's at right now. If you watch the business channels, it's all about tech and AI and who's got the ability to do this, because obviously there's a lot of money in this stuff. So it's really just a late stage monopoly capitalism, and okay, they took us, they enslaved us in agriculture, they enslaved us in the Industrial Revolution. They said men go to the factory, and then men did, and then they left the farms and they gave up their land, and guess what? The crown got their land, and then come over to America, you know, enslave the Indians, go to Australia, you know, enslave the Aborigines, because already the Europeans were inculcated and initiated somewhat into this Nephilim cult of evil, of just exploiting people and using people, and not looking at the Indians as brothers, but as subhumans, really, which they did. So they brought this disease over here and to Australia and to all the New World, and crushed the Indians, because the Indians had to be crushed because they were pure godly creatures who hadn't been tainted by any of this Middle East craziness that the Bible describes. I mean, my view of it is the Indians wouldn't have to read the Bible, because it's just carnage and bloodshed, and the only reason we should read it is because it's our history, really, because we came from that. But they didn't come from that. They were just victims of that, you know, was brought to them, and they were like, what the hell is this? You know, we're just trying to be happy. We're just trying to, you know, work 4 hours a week in a hunting and gathering society and have a lot of idle time, a lot of family time, and like watching our kids play. And, you know, all of a sudden they're just like, they're just, you know, slammed with this neo-colonial negativity. Yeah. And oh, we have to conquer these, we have to take all the gold and steal it from the Indians and take all their stuff. And just this disease, this Wetiko disease, this mindset of intellect, again, taking us over. Like Carlos Castaneda said, the intellect or the mind is the monster that stalks you, you know. And so many great writers, Uspensky talked about this, and Gurdjieff, and all the great writers of the time have talked about how it's your mind that really gets out of control and becomes very cunning, very manipulative. And, you know, if you just stay in your heart, you'll stay a good person. Krishnamurti is another guy that talks about this. You know, the brilliant people that have come through history have all talked about the same thing, and it's the mind that will deceive you into the alien deception, into believing that somehow this is tied with the return of Jesus somehow. And it's all going to be a deception. And I'm afraid you're right. I'm afraid most Christians are going to be on the wrong side when this occurs. And the only people that are going to be on the right side are people that stay grounded, people that just, I call it a bullshit meter. It's a pineal gland, okay? They're trashing our pineal glands with fluoridation of the water, with vaccinations,
right,
with technology, EMF waves. But if you have that pineal gland and the ability to say that's bullshit, you have to keep that. And people might not like it. It's not politically correct, but whatever. That's what God gave you to discern. Discern. You know, you have to discern, which is kind of funny, because CERN is the place where they're opening these portals, and CERN is the place where, again, funded by the Crown, by the way, CERN, this God particle, they want to shatter it apart. Yeah, because they're smarter than God. So, God couldn't have possibly made these nanoparticles that we can't even predict how they move. That couldn't possibly be true. So, you know, even though the truth of the matter is particle physics is all BS, and this is an electric universe where, yeah, it gets down to where it's mush. You can't see particles. It's waves, it's plasma, it's electricity, it's good vibes or bad vibes. It's not plasma physics. Another lie from the Royal Society of Physics. So but they're just determined to keep pounding on particles and breaking them apart, and let's make another nuclear bomb and destroy some more stuff. And I mean, so the bullshit meter, very important. Yeah, people really need to be guarded. They need to be, it's a good to be open-minded, but, maybe now we're at a time where you should be a little bit, close that a little bit. If you know what you already know, then just guard it. Look around you. Don't be open to just anything. Don't be tolerant to anything. Sometimes tolerance is bad. When you tolerate evil, that's not good, is it?
No.
So they're turning all these good words into bad things. They're turning environmentalism into this fake climate change agenda, for example. I'm a huge environmentalist, but I got my degree in environmental studies, my master's. But now they're taking the word environmentalism, which is a good thing, protect the earth, that's God's creation, and they're using it as a climate change agenda, which is part of Agenda 21, which is part of the 5G rollout, which is to crush us and to depopulate us. So this is what's going on in the world, this massive deception. And the main thing to save yourself and your family is to have that bullshit meter in place and trust it. Not your mind, your heart. You follow your heart, follow what your gut instinct is, because that's what God gave you. That's what you're not able to connect with right now, because you're urbanized, you're technologized, you're industrialized, you're capitalized, and you've been turned. It's sad what's happened to humanity, but we don't have to accept it. We can disengage from it, and we can become pure human beings again. And that's really what's going to save this world. The Indians will save this world. The mentality, or the understanding, I should say, of the native people is what's going to save this world from what's coming, if anything can save it at all.
Yeah, I remember someone said one time as a Native American woman, and she said, they were putting on their tennis shoes running around. She said, don't wear the shoes. That'll only kill you. You'll be sick all the time. Because what a lot of people don't know is that there's negative ions in the earth, or I think it's positive ions in the earth, negative ions in you, and you need to be able to be barefooted on the ground in order to get properly charged. That's a scientific fact, but the Native Indians, they don't need the science, they just know it was true. And I really feel like the Native Indians were really thrown under the bus. I don't want to keep you a long time, so I think what we ought to do then, I'll just have to save some of this other stuff for maybe another time, Dean, but let's go into the 5G and discuss that, and maybe just while we're at it, I know President Morales, he was overthrown by another CIA coup. So what we did back in the 80s, we overthrew Nicaragua. I should have known back then. I didn't realize that myself. I was the good guy. I was a decoy that they would use for themselves. But because I knew the families that were running drugs on ships, bringing them into America. And then the CIA went on a killing spree to silence those that they were afraid they were going to blow the cover of the operation. I knew a lot of those people that were killed. Not that I knew the people per se, but we were all being told they were Russian spies taking them out. In the case of Morales and inside of Bolivia there, again, they need these natural resources, so they just strong-arm the guy right out. And so, but maybe too, because of the lithium, and I know that's part of what they're going to need for this agenda that they're moving forward in the 5G technology. But if we can, let's look at the 5G technology, how they're going to use it, what your knowledge is on this, the dangers of this. Now they're talking about 6G. Trump just signs this stuff to put it even in the urban areas, and every other house, things like that. And we'll kind of close out with this because I know I've had you on for quite a while already, so I don't want to overuse my time here with you.
Yeah, great. Yeah. It's a battlefield weapon system. 5G. This whole computer era that we're in is a weapons system. It's a military operation. Okay, it's a military operation to control humanity. They realized a long time ago that it's a lot easier to be able to monitor, surveil, GPS people that know where you're at, know where you're going, know what you're shopping, know what you're doing, and also yes, mind control you, because the information doesn't just go one way. The information also comes into your mind that comes through the computer and the television and the radio and the newspapers and everything. So what we know as the media, they used to call it propaganda. They just used to call it propaganda. And then they started calling it media to give it a veneer of legitimacy. Before it was called propaganda, it was called witchcraft or sorcery, which is where really all science comes from. It's all sorcery. It's all black magic, because it's just a way to sort of hoodwink the people. And so media gets between you and reality. A medium gets between you and reality. You don't need a medium. You don't need anything between you and what's out the window. Okay, so that's the first thing. So 5G is just an extension of already a weapons system. In fact, when Kennedy's regulators, when IBM took the idea of their computer, their big Cray computer, to the Kennedy administration in '63, and they said, we want to start selling this to the public, and Kennedy's regulators said, no way in hell, this is a weapons system. This could be used to subdue entire populations of people with disinformation, which the Pentagon had been doing with it up until that point already. And then came the internet, which was ARPANET, which came from DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Administration. Used to be just an NSA program that was definitely used for psychological warfare against the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians or whoever. And again, the NSA people in the early 90s, mid 90s, they couldn't believe that this internet was going to be released to the public. They were just shocked. They were just like, man, this is a weapons system. You can't just let people have this. This is going to be bad. And it has been bad. But the mid 90s was a big turning point. This is when you had the Clinton Bush kind of mafia running the show for, consecutively for a few there. And this is when a lot of bad things happened. And then Tony Blair in Britain, he destroyed the Labour Party and called the New Labour Party and pulled it to the right, deregulated the city of London even further, got the Eurodollar market, which had just started up in like the 70s. See, because before that, U.S. corporations couldn't take their money offshore unless they were buying or selling product. And with the opening of the Eurodollar market, all that money, all the corporate money in the city of London or one of its offshore entities, and avoid taxes, and also launder drug money, launder human trafficking, money, gold money, oil money, arms money. So everything became dirty and opaque. So the technology enabled this. It's not a coincidence that it came about at the same time. All of this needed technology to really be utilized. And but now we're fast forwarding to 5G. And 5G, it goes way back to the RCA Corporation in England. Actually, it goes back to this, Marconi, the telegraph. And Marconi's invention, the telegraph, was usurped by the RCA Corporation, a British corporation, even though it's called Radio Corporation of America. It's always been a British crown control company. They turned Marconi's invention into weaponry, because that's what they do, and it was sonar. They developed sonar for the British Royal Navy with this. So out of RCA came Serco and General Electric, and it's General Electric that's making all the smart meters, and they've made a lot of the advances in this technology. And then Serco is the company that controls, through its administering of the U.S. Patent Office, sort of keeps a lid on, keeps an eye on, and controls the 5G technology. The first patent of which was in 1991. Richard Walker, working for Hewlett Packard, came up with the first 5G patent, or Internet of Things patent, where the idea is just to connect everything in this world so it all talks to each other, communicates with each other, and makes our life so much easier. So anyway, the 5G battlefield system, it developed into radar, into LiDAR, and it's the same exact technology. It's an over-horizon weapons system, which you don't see coming. So it's very possible with the nanoparticulates, like you were talking about with the chemtrails, that our bodies, we're breathing that stuff in, we're becoming antennas. So we're going to be part of the 5G. It's the Internet of Things, and we're going to be part of that Internet of Things, literally. And pretty sure the plan is to introduce eventually, through an economic crash, which could happen at any time. Mark Carney, the Bank of England president, was in Jackson Hole this summer talking about how the US dollar was disruptive and we had to go to a digital global currency. So that's what's coming. They just needed a crisis situation, some kind of a crash. Then they're going to try to bring in, a microchip, definitely. I mean, they already got the watches, they already got the goggles, they already got, Regina Dugan of DARPA runs around and brags about this tattoo she has that she can buy and sell things with. So that's the plan, is to bring, and this is where Bitcoin comes in. And sorry, Max Kaiser and all you Bitcoin fanatics who I respect otherwise, but you're wrong about Bitcoin. It's not going to end central bank monopoly or hegemony. It's actually going to reinforce it and make it easier for them. Because the idea has always been to go to a digital currency. It'll probably be under the IMF, under the special drawing rights, regime that they already have set up. And then they're going to introduce this microchip. And since you're already antennized and everything, it'll be really easy for you just to, go around and buying and selling. And if you don't accept the chip, you won't be able to. And it's just in Revelation 13. It's right there. So those of us who don't accept it, our lives are going to be harder initially. But again, I think the joke's going to be on the people that do accept it, because in the long term, if you follow the Indian path, and if you just drop the whole system and you start living a simple life and you go to the mountains and you scrounge and you get together with people that are like-minded, your life in the long run is going to go back to paradise. You'll go back to heaven. Maybe that's what heaven even means. Maybe heaven's not out there. Maybe it's just right here and we make it or we don't. And the other people are going to hell. And they think it's going to be easier because, I can buy and sell with my chip and everything's great. And I got these goggles and everything's great. And that's just going to be a train wreck. And probably it's going to fail because I don't think God's going to allow it to really go to its end. And it'll be like a great flood or be like a solar flare. It'll be like some situation that will come about that, these humans were tempted again. Sorry, we got to start over. And then there'll be a remnant of people, I believe. Like, I think the Aborigines were the remnant this last time around because they just seem really older than anybody else and really wise. And that remnant will, again, have to start over with humanity and see if this time we can resist the temptation of technology, Nephilim crown AI. And, that's what I want to be. I want to be part of that remnant. And, so that whatever it is, it's just, you just have to live with right action. And it's a time where, you might think the path that they're giving you looks easy, but it's going to be a hard path. And the one that looks hard is probably going to be easy. So just, you have to use your gut, and you have to stay on the right side and do the right thing. And then I truly believe God will guide you. If you let God guide you, he will guide you through this.
Oh, Dean, you've said a lot of information, and I appreciate the time you've taken with us today. Again, Dean's book, Nephilim Crown 5G Apocalypse. You can see the link in the description below. Henderson Left Hook .wordpress.com is Dean's website. Check it out. I'm sure if you get this book here, it'll really educate you a lot on what's going on, a lot more than what we've covered here. A lot of the things that are happening around the world. When you pick it up, it's one of those books you don't want to pick down. And I'm not a major reader, but it was one of the books when I picked it up, I had to read and continue to read there. And, if you're a Christian, there may be some views that you may not agree with, but read it and see those things, though, that you can understand, that go with what you think to begin with. It'll help open your eyes to what's really happening in this world. Dean, I really believe, is a good man, and he's done an awesome job in trying to help wake up humanity to the evils that are happening in this world. So thank you for watching. Dean, any closing words you'd like to add?
Just want to thank you for having me, Stephen, and really appreciate it, and I really respect the work you've been doing too, brother. So just keep it up, and see you on the other side.
Sounds great. God bless you, brother. Thank you, and thank you guys for watching. Erev Tov. 1 second.